Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm creating 3 Christmas cards using supplies sent to me by Kraft Supplies for You in my October design team kit. Today's cards I'll use some of the glass bubbles, the Ranger's Antiquities Cobalt embossing powder and some Stampendous Mica fragments. I started by stamping and embossing these Christmas baubles. They're from a Kaisercraft stamp called Merry Christmas. I stamped them using my Versamark ink pad onto some white cardstock. Then I sprinkled on the embossing Antiquities from Ranger's in cobalt blue. Once I had heated them with my heat tool, I used my scissors to cut them out. I did 4 of these in total. I noticed that with the Antiquities embossing powder, it doesn't come to a bright glossy shine like other embossing powders, so you have to really keep a close eye on exactly when your powder has been melted. I'm using my Fiskars pointy scissors to do my fussy cutting. They're spring loaded and I find that they're much easier to use on my hands. I do have arthritis and I find these to be quite handy. I wanted to add some sparkle to my baubles, so I'm using my uniquely creative clear glitter pen to give each of the baubles 2 coats. This will give them a nice sparkle when they're dry. Time now to start assembling my card. I'm going to be doing one of the long line cards today. The card itself is 3 7/8 by 8 1/4. I cut a piece of white cardstock 7 7/8 by 8 1/4 and folded it in halves to make my card base. The papers that I'm using are from Kaisercraft, from the Starry Night paper range, and some of their navy plain cardstock. I cut my navy cardstock so that it was 1/4 inch smaller, which gave me 1/8 inch all around, and then I cut some silver paper actually, which was 1/4 inch smaller all round as well, for my layer that my baubles are going to sit on. I've cut the cardstock out of the loop at the top of the bauble so that I can thread some crochet cotton through that. I'm going to thread the cotton through the hole and use some sticky tape to attach it to the back of the bauble. Because I want my baubles to sit proud of the background, I'm putting a piece of cardboard behind each one of them. I'll use my glue to attach the cardboard to each of the baubles. Now I'm going to use my glue to attach my front panel to my actual card base. I'm using my art glitter glue here. I've only been using this for a short time, but I find that it's pretty good, and the cardstock or paper doesn't generally buckle up when I use it. I'm going to now attach my baubles to the front panel of my card using the same glue. I then fold the crochet cotton over the panel and secure it at the back using just normal sticky tape. I've attached foam tape to the back of my panel and I'm now going to attach that to my card base. The greeting for my card comes from this Kaisercraft stamp called Doodled Christmas, and it just says Merry Christmas, but it's nice and long. I'm going to stamp it in my stamping platform because I want to make sure I get a good coverage for this so that my greeting, once I emboss it, is nice and solid. Now I'm going to trim my sentiment down and use foam tape to attach it to the front of the card. and that's going to finish off our first card. For my second card, I'm going to use the Stampendous Mica Fragments. So to start, I got a piece of jack paper or double-sided tape. You could use double-sided tape on cardstock or the double-sided sticky labels that you can get. And I peeled the top layer off and then completely covered the top of the sticky section with the mica flakes. I gave them a good rub and tried to secure them as best I could, so that when I did my die cutting with them, they wouldn't all come off. Once you've rubbed it quite firmly and got all of the flakes on there that you want, you can then tip the rest of the flakes back into your jar, so it's quite economical. I took my sheet of card to my Big Shot and cut out 5 Christmas trees using this Christmas tree die. I do not know the brand of it. Time now to create my card base. I'm using Kaisercraft navy cardstock for the card base, and I'm cutting it 5 1/4 inches by 10 1/2 inches, and I'm folding it in half to make a 5 1/4 inch square card base. I've chosen a couple of papers from my Starry Nights pad once again. The lighter one, which has got reindeers on it, I've cut that 5 inches square, and then the darker one there with the music notes, I've cut that 4 3/4 inches square. I'm going to make a panel to go across the centre of the card to hold my Christmas trees. I cut the silver paper 3 inches by 5 1/4, and the navy paper that's going to go on top of that is 2 3/4 inches by 5 1/4. Now I'm going to use my Prima distressing tool to distress all of the edges of the papers, and then I'm going to ink them with my black Versa ink cube. I'm going to use double-sided tape to attach my layers to my card base, the first 2 layers, and then I'm going to use same double-sided tape to attach my top navy piece to my silver piece, but I'm going to use a piece of cardboard between the card base and the top panel that's going to hold my Christmas trees. Next, I use my glue to attach 3 of the Christmas trees across the front panel of my card. Even though it has got it's on jack paper, I didn't want to trust that that was going to stay there, so that's why I used the glue as well. Time now to position my panel on the front of my card, leaving room for my greeting. I decided to use these Kaisercraft rub-ons. They're called Merry Christmas. I have had them for, must be close on 10 years, and I just thought it was a good opportunity to try and use some up. So I cut one of the greetings from the sheet and then used my Teflon bone folder to rub that onto a piece of white cardstock. Now that the greeting is attached to the cardstock, I trim it down to the size I want for the front of the card. I ink around the edge of the greeting and then attach it to some cardboard before using glue to attach it to the front of the card. Because the card base is navy, I cut a piece of white cardstock that is 5 inches square and attach that to the inside. And that completes card number 2. For the next card, I'm going to use a couple of the glass bubbles that were in my kit. I wasn't sure how many of the bubbles I was going to use, so I took 3 out of the pack and I used some gold stickles and applied quite a thick coat on the back of them. I set these aside to dry. Because they're going onto a non-porous surface, they did take quite a while to dry. I actually did this probably the day before I made the card. I'm going to use white cardstock for my card base. Once again, it's going to be 5 1/4 inches square, so I'm cutting 5 1/4 by 10 1/2, and I will score that in the middle and fold it over. Time now to cut my layers. The navy layer, which is going to be the bottom layer, is 5 inches square, and then the lighter cardstock, which comes once again from the Kaisercraft Starry Night paper pad, is 4 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. I had these poinsettias that I had cut out from one of the 12 by 12 papers that I had in my stash, but I felt that they were way too large for this, so I had a look through the 6-inch paper pad and found the paper that has got the poinsettias on it, and then fussy cut them. When I'd finished the fussy cutting, I also cut a strip of navy that was 5 1/4 inches by 1 1/2 inches, and a piece of white cardstock that was 5 1/4 inches by 1 1/4 inches. Then I took my distressing tool and distressed and inked the edges of all of the paper and cardstock. Now it's time to attach all of my layers to my card base. I attached a layer of cardboard to the back of the base navy panel before I stuck that to the card. Then I used my glue to attach the reindeer pattern paper on top of that. I then stuck a piece of cardboard behind the navy strip that goes across the middle of the card, and attached the white strip on top of that, and then attached them to my card base. I attached the navy and white panel in about the middle of the card front. Now I'm going to position some of those fussy cut flowers behind the centre panel so that they look like they're poking out from above and below the centre panel. Once I'm happy with the positioning, I use my glue to put them in place. The stickles on the back of my glass bubbles is now dry, so I use a dab of glue to attach them to the card front, one on each end of that front middle panel. The greeting for this card came from the paper pack. It says Merry Christmas, and I just rub my finger along the edge, or with a damp finger, to get rid of those little paper lumps, and then use my glue to attach it to the centre of the card. So that finishes my final card for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Don't forget to pop over to Kraft Supplies for You. I'll put a link in the description box below so you can check them out. And don't forget, if you're not already a subscriber, please just click that little subscribe button. Thank you.